Famous battles. Battle of Ypres. The Battle of Ypres, also known as the Third Battle of Ypres, was a major World War I battle that took place in Ypres salient on the Western Front. The battle lasted from July to November 1917 and was one of the most gruelling and costly battles of the war. The primary objective of the battle was to break through the German defensive lines in Flanders and capture the strategic high ground around the town of Passchendaele. The Allies hoped to gain a decisive victory and push the Germans back. The Ypres salient was characterised by flat, waterlogged terrain that made movement difficult for both sides. Heavy rainfall turned the battlefield into a quagmire of mud, which posed significant challenges for troops and equipment. The battle was marked by intense and prolonged fighting, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. The Allies, including British, Canadian, Australian and New Zealand troops, faced determined German resistance as they fought for control of key positions. The Battle of Ypres resulted in a staggering number of casualties on both sides. The mud, barbed wire and machine gun fire made it a particularly deadly and brutal battle. The conditions also led to many soldiers succumbing to diseases like trench foot. Despite the high cost in lives and resources, the Battle of Ypres did not result in a decisive breakthrough for either side. The Allies made some gains in the area, but were unable to achieve their ultimate objectives of capturing Passchendaele and breaking through German lines. The Battle of Ypres is remembered for its brutality, the challenging conditions faced by soldiers, and the high human costs of war. It serves as a poignant reminder of the sacrifices made by those who fought in World War I. Battle of the Somme. The Battle of the Somme, fought between July 1st and November 18th, 1916, during World War I, was one of the largest and most brutal battles of the conflict. The Battle of the Somme was launched by the British and French forces with the aim of relieving pressure of the French forces at Verdun and breaking through the German lines on the Western Front. The British also hoped to achieve decisive victory over the Germans. The Battle of the Somme was characterised by trench warfare, with both sides dug into fortified positions along the front lines. The battle saw intense artillery bombardments, infantry attacks, and heavy casualties on both sides. The battles began on July 1st, 1916, with a massive British and French artillery barrage aimed at destroying the German defences. The British launched a series of infantry attacks, but they faced strong German resistance and suffered heavy losses. It resulted in staggering casualties on both sides. On the first day alone, the British suffered from over 57,000 casualties, including nearly 20,000 killed. By the end of the battle, the British and French forces had suffered over 600,000 casualties, while the Germans had incurred around 500,000 casualties. That's over 1 million men. The Battle of the Somme saw the first large-scale use of tanks in warfare. The British introduced the Mark I tank to the battlefield, although the early tanks faced mechanical problems or were not as effective as later models. Despite the heavy fighting and casualties, the Battle of the Somme ended in a stalemate, with both sides unable to achieve a decisive breakthrough. The British and French forces made limited gains, but the German defences remained largely intact. The Battle of the Somme had a profound impact on the morale of the troops and the civilian population. The high casualties and the lack of significant gains raised questions about the effectiveness of military tactics and leadership. The Battle of the Somme remains one of the most iconic and tragic battles of World War I, symbolising the horrors of trench warfare and the scale of human suffering endured during the conflict. Gallipoli. The Gallipoli campaign, also known as the Battle of Gallipoli, was a significant military campaign during World War I that took place on the Gallipoli Peninsula in the Ottoman Empire, which is now modern-day Turkey. from April 1915 to January 1916. The campaign was a joint Allied operation primarily led by British and French forces with the aim of capturing Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul, and securing a sea route to Russia through the Dardanelles Strait. The Allied forces launched the Gallipoli campaign with the strategic objectives of opening a new front against the Central Powers, particularly the Ottoman Empire, and securing a supply route to Russia through the Black Sea. The campaign offered to knock the Ottoman Empire out of the war and support Russia's war effort. The campaign began with naval assault on the Dardanelles Strait in February 1915 as Allied warships attempted to force their way through the strait and reach Constantinople. However, the naval attacks were met with strong resistance from the Ottoman defences, including minefields and coastal artillery. Following the failure of the naval campaign, Allied forces, including troops from Australia, New Zealand, Britain and France, landed on the Gallipoli Peninsula on April 25, 1915. The landings were met with fierce Ottoman resistance, and the campaign quickly turned into a protracted and bloody stalemate. The rugged and inhospitable terrain of the Gallipoli Peninsula, characterised by steep cliffs, narrow beaches and rugged hills, posed significant challenges for the Allied forces. The harsh conditions, coupled with Ottoman defences and the lack of adequate supplies and support, made the campaign extremely difficult for both sides. Despite repeated attempts to break the stalemate, the Gallipoli campaign devolved into a brutal and costly conflict with high casualties on both sides. The campaign resulted in heavy losses for the Allies, including soldiers from Australia and New Zealand, Anzacs, as well as Ottoman forces. In December 1915 and January 1916, after months of fighting and mounting casualties, the Allied forces decided to evacuate from Gallipoli. The evacuation was carried out under the cover of darkness and successfully removed the remaining troops from the peninsula without alerting the Ottoman defenders. The Gallipoli campaign is remembered as a significant and tragic chapter in the history of World War I, marked by the heroism and sacrifice of the soldiers who fought on both sides. The campaign has become a symbol of national identity and remembered Australia and New Zealand, and is now known as Anzac Day.